Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today we're going to make a quilt from a box. We've made these before, a quilt from a box, and it's a kit that Moda Fabrics puts together. They're tons of fun because everything you need to make the whole top and the binding is all in one cute box. I've got the boxes right over here. And I love the fact that it comes in a cute gift box, because it's almost like you get a present and you get to make a quilt out of it. So this is made with the Hallow Harvest collection of fabrics from Moda. So let's take this over to the studio and get started sewing. So let's check out what we've got in the box here. We've got the pattern. The pattern is called Night Flight by Basic Gray, and it will make a quilt that is 58 by 72 inches. A nice little thank you card. We even have a little ruler here. I think this brown part comes off. We've got a nice acrylic ruler that we can travel with if we like. Then we've got all these different fat eighths in the Hallow Harvest collection. We've got some borders, background, and some grunge for the accent. The first thing we're going to do is open this up, and we're going to get out these fat eighths here. We've got them double wrapped. Cute little package, and we're going to want to iron these nice and flat so we can do the cutting. I think we're going to have to separate them by colors too. I think we're going to put green in some of the blocks. I know we've got orange in some of the blocks, black in some of the blocks. So let's open these up and iron them nice and flat. I have everything ironed up, separated by colors. We've got 4 different colors. Now I'm just going to follow the pattern to do all the sub cutting. This is not my pattern, so I can't give you all of those sizes, but these patterns are very easy to follow. I have all of the colorful pieces cut up for all the patchwork, but we still need to cut the dark and the light bats, and those are going to be cut out of these fabrics here. Now we have all the pieces we need for all of the patchwork. The quilt looks kind of complex, but there are really only 2 blocks. There's this star block, and then there's the bat blocks. And the bat blocks look really fun. I really want to make those, so let's start with that. Now, before we make our bat blocks, we need to make a decision. The pattern shows these star blocks done all in one print. So if you want your stars to be all in one print, you're going to want to pull off those pieces before you start making the bat blocks. Otherwise, your stars are going to end up scrappy, which is totally fine, but it's just a little bit different than what is shown on the pattern. Here are all the pieces for one bat block, and we need to mark the back sides of some of these black pieces. So I'm going to use a chalk pencil, and I'm going to draw a line right along the diagonal. I have 3 stacks of fabrics here, and before we can actually build our bat, we need to do something to these stacks here. So the first thing we're going to do is make some half square triangles. To make a half square triangle, we're going to take a printed block, and we're going to take one of these black blocks that has the line on the back, line them up, and we're going to stitch 1/4 inch away from that line on both sides. So my presser foot is 1/4 inch. So I can just put the presser foot right on the line and stitch down there. And I'm going to do these all in a row, so I'm going to chain piece. I'm going to do 4 of them all in a row. I'm going to go down one side, then I'm going to turn it around and go down the other side. Now we can just turn this around and go down the other side. Now we can trim these apart, and we are going to slice it with our blade right along the drawn line. Now we can take these right to the ironing board. I like to put the lighter fabric down, and then I'm going to open this up and give it a little pressing. Then trim off the dog ears. So I use scissors to do that. Just very carefully trim off that excess. The half square triangles are done. Now we need to work on these parts here. So all we're going to do is put this onto one corner. I'm going to line everything up and I'm going to stitch on the line. Same thing on the second block. These squares just get folded right over in half, and I'm going to finger press it, and then I'm just going to take my scissors right here at the machine and cut off the back 2 layers. So now we have a square with a little black in the corner. Now we can start putting our bat together. So I'm going to follow the pattern, put the pieces where they go, and it's going to kind of go in rows. So we're going to have one of these guys up here. It's kind of like doing a jigsaw puzzle, but a lot more fun. Okay, we've got almost the whole thing done here. Now it looks kind of complicated. Those are all the pieces, but we're going to be making it in 3 sections. So we've got one section here, one section here, and one section here. So basically we have 3 rows. So I'm going to move this over and this out of the way, and we're going to work on this row first. First thing is to sew these 2 guys together and put them right back where they were. I'm not going to be ironing them. I'm just going to be finger pressing in the middle here. So let's press this one up. The pattern does not actually give us directions for which way the seam allowances go. So we're going to start and we're going to press them to one side. And as we build, we'll be able to see which way to press the next seam allowances so that things will nest. Now we're just going to sew these in order. So this one will go on here. And everything does fit exact, so it's pretty quick stitching. So I'm going to press this seam allowance to the right, and I'm just going to finger press. So I'm just opening it up and drawing my fingernail right down the seam. That goes here. Now we'll put that guy on it. I have all of the seam allowances on this row all pressed to the right. That means when we make the next row, we're going to press all the seam allowances to the left. To make the second row, we're going to use the same procedure. We're going to sew these small pieces together first, then we're going to stitch everything from left to right. So all of the seam allowances on this row are going to the left. And that's good because all of these are going to the right. So when we sew these together, they're going to be going in opposite directions, and it'll be really easy to make the intersections match and have them lay flat. All 3 sections are done, and I do like to iron these now. You can see it's starting to look like a bat. So here's how I'm going to iron it. I'm going to take one section and I'm going to iron from the back first. I'm actually going to turn it around because these seam allowances are going that way and I want them to stay going that way. So I'm using no steam and I'm just making sure that these guys go the way we want them to. Then I'm going to flip it back over, press it with my hands, make sure I can feel those seam allowances going the correct way. And as you iron, you can make sure that you're doing it straight. So if it looks like there's a little dip in it, you can push that up a little. And you can really straighten things out and make your patchwork look better with your ironing. So just kind of ease it straight and then take the next section and do the same thing. Now we are ready to put these together to make the block. So when we sew this seam here, the seam allowances are going in opposite directions. So that's going to make it really easy to match everything up and have those intersections lie nice and flat. I'm not even going to pin it because I can feel if they're matching. Now it really looks like a bat. There's only one more block to make, and that is this little mini star block. Here are all the pieces we need for one of the little star blocks. So I'm going to start making what's called a flying geese unit. So we need a rectangle here and we need a square, and this is marked right across the diagonal. So I'm going to place this in the corner and I'm going to stitch right along that diagonal. Now you actually don't have to mark them all if you don't want to. I have a method that eliminates that step. So I took my straight ruler here and I'm going to place it right under where the needle would come down. Make sure it's straight and not crooked so I can line up with here. And then I take some of this painter's tape because it doesn't leave a residue, and I've put a piece of tape right down that line. That way when I'm stitching, I can take a rectangle and the square, and all I have to do is put the top right at the needle hole and the bottom corner right on that tape line and stitch and keep that on the line the whole way up. And I've gone right along the diagonal there without marking. Now we have one square on 4 of these rectangles, and we are going to want to iron this open. So you're folding it right along your stitching line. Everything meets up there. Give it a nice press and some steam, and then trim off the back 2 layers, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now take another square and put it on the opposite end of your rectangle and stitch again from corner to corner on the diagonal there. I'm going to use my tape for my line. So do that with all 4 of these, and we're again going to open this up, iron it, and trim off the back 2 layers. Now we have all the pieces we need to make the star block. So these go here, and these go in the corners. And now we'll stitch this to this, this to this, this to this, and then we'll sew on the last row. I've got all of the blocks stitched together and we're ready to lay out the quilt. The only thing I didn't show was each one of these star blocks gets a rectangle sewn to it. So we've got all those guys, we've got different colors of bats here, and then I've got a few rectangular pieces which are going to go between some of the blocks. So I'm going to use the box to help me lay out the pieces because it has a nice big picture on it. Now we're starting to see the overall pattern. I'm going to keep laying the blocks out, but you do have to be careful. Some of the bats are facing this way, some of the bats are facing that way, and I'm following the pattern exactly for the block placement. Now some rows have bats and stars and then these rectangles added. So when we get the whole thing laid out, I'm just going to sew together one row, sew together the next row, then put those rows together, and everything will meet up in certain spots and it'll be really easy to stitch together. I have the bat quilt on the quilting machine. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Now we need to pick a thread color. So we could go with black, but honestly, that's going to be so stark against the light, I don't think it's going to look good. I think a lighter one will look a lot better and really won't fight that much on the black. I think that the gray will actually look the best and it won't show up too much on the colored parts. So let's go with this nice silver gray. I have 2 different quilting patterns that I've really been waiting to get a Halloween quilt so that I can use these. I love the spider webs. That's a really good Halloween one. But I think that these bats would actually be better because there's bats in the quilt. I've got the night flight quilt off the machine. I'm really happy with how it turned out. The blocks were really fun to make. They're not extremely quick because there's a lot of little pieces, but they're very satisfying to see those bats come to life. And there's only 20 bats. There aren't endless amounts, so you can get them done. There's 5 of each color. There's these really nice star blocks. I love how those pop out. And the quilting, you see a little bit of the bat here. You can see more of a bat there. And of course, on the back side, since I used an almost solid grunge, you can see the bats there. That looks really good. Thanks for watching our tutorial on how to make the night flight quilt. We hope you enjoyed it. Now we're going to have another giveaway. We're going to give away this quilt that's called Trade Winds. This is a Cozy Quilt Designs pattern. And you may have seen us make this in a video. It's a really fun pattern to make. And these are all nice batiks. It's got a fancy patchwork border on it. So it's easy to enter the giveaway. There's a link. There's a link right below the video and it says giveaway. So click that and then put in your name and your email address and you might win the quilt. Now, if you don't want to miss any of our new tutorials, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Happy quilting!